Good evening and welcome to a summary of the news. The United Nations welcomed the introduction of a 48-hour ceasefire in Syria's city of Aleppo on Moscow's initiative beginning today, saying that aid to Syrian cities has made significant progress. The UN says improved conditions on the ground will also help its efforts to broker a deal to stop the war and usher in a transitional government. The special advisor to the UN Special Envoy for Syria, Jan Egeland, said a large convoy is ready to go to the besieged Hims suburb of Al-Wa'ir, where people have recently died for lack of humanitarian aid.
Really hope that this was a turning point for our humanitarian access to besieged areas and also to hard-to-reach areas. But we shouldn't be naive. The war is continuing, and in a war zone, everything is fragile.
Earlier, a series of photo stills showed smoke and flames rising after what fighters of the Syria Democratic Forces, SDF, said were US-led airstrikes on the mills of Manbij in northern Syria, where Daesh terrorists are positioned. An alliance of US-backed militias is continuing its advance against the terrorists in the area. The SDF is a US-backed group formed last year, which includes the Kurdish YPG militia and Arab fighters. And as the militias advance against Daesh, their political allies are making progress of their own towards a new federal system of government, which they hope will take root in newly captured areas. The autonomous federation being planned by Syrian Kurdish parties and their allies is taking shape fast. A constitution should be finalized in 3 months and possibly sooner, to be followed quickly by elections. In Iraq, the World Health Organization has warned that people trapped inside Fallujah and cannot escape because of the ongoing conflict with Daesh are at great risk of disease from poor sanitation and lack of resources. He said the population has come from areas that did not have proper health care for a long time and have not been immunized for over 14 months.
Who were trapped in Fallujah had no basic services, public health services. We have no idea about the quality of the water they were drinking. We have no idea about the sanitation, the level of sanitation. So what we're dealing with is population that has been deprived from basic health care for a very long time. So the risks of disease outbreaks is high.
Daesh, meanwhile, is still slaughtering Yazidis in Iraq and Syria, according to the United Nations, in what it described as genocide. Paulo Pinheiro of the UN Commission of Inquiry on Syria said interviews with scores of survivors have revealed evidence of crimes against humanity and war crimes. Daesh considers the Yazidis infidels and devil worshippers and holds some 3,200 Yazidi women and children in captivity.
From the day of the attack on Sinjar until today, ISIS has permanently sought to erase the Yazidis through killing, sexual slavery, enslavement, torture, inhuman and degrading treatment and forcible transfer, causing serious bodily and mental harm.
Here at home, a total of 150 new Syrian refugees entered into the kingdom through various crossing points during the last 24 hours. The Royal Medical Services at the borders offered first aid to refugee patients, and border guards provided necessary aid before transferring them to refugee camps. Jordan Response Plan 2015 estimates the total number of Syrian refugees in Jordan to be around 1.5 million, almost 650,000 of which are registered as refugees. And in a rare public hearing of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Director of the CIA, John Brennan, said Daesh has tens of thousands of fighters around the world, and the group's terrorism capability and global reach have not been diminished, despite gains against it on the battlefield. He told the panel the CIA has not yet found direct links between the Orlando shooter, Omar Mateen, or any international terrorist organization, but he said Daesh is training and attempting to deploy operatives for further attacks outside territory it holds in Iraq and Syria.
Agency Director John Brennan.
These so-called lone wolves, the ones who operate as a result of the incitement and encouragement. Unfortunately, despite all our progress against ISIL on the battlefield and in the financial realm, our efforts have not reduced the group's terrorism capability and global reach. The resources needed for terrorism are very modest, and the group would have to suffer even heavier losses on territory, manpower, and money for its terrorist capacity to decline significantly.
U.S. Democratic Senator Chris Murphy ended a blockade of the Senate after nearly 15 hours, saying Republicans had pledged to hold votes on gun control measures to expand background checks and prevent people on U.S. terrorism watch lists from buying guns. The push in Congress for gun control, which would be the first in the United States in more than 20 years, follows Sunday's massacre in a nightclub in Orlando, Florida, when a gunman killed 49 people. Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump has also joined the gun debate, announcing he would meet with the National Rifle Association, the country's most powerful gun lobby, to talk about barring people who are on terrorism watch lists from buying guns. British Prime Minister David Cameron suspended campaigning in Britain's European Union referendum following the death of lawmaker Joe Cox today. Cameron was in Gibraltar, where he cancelled a rally he was due to attend ahead of next week's referendum when Brits decide whether to stay or exit the EU. MP Cox died in hospital after being shot and stabbed in her constituency in Birstall, Northern England. Following her election to Parliament last year, Cox was outspoken in support of Britain's membership of the European Union. Cox was pro-immigration and praised the positive impact immigration has had on her constituency. She chaired a parliamentary group named Friends of Syria, which aims to build a greater understanding in Parliament of the Syria conflict and allow MPs to discuss the diplomatic, humanitarian and military options for UK policy.
Before going into
As the date of a Brexit referendum approaches, European Council President Donald Tusk said Britain is a key state in the European Union and that leaving the bloc would not make any sense. He said on Twitter that a decision to leave would herald 7 years of political limbo and uncertainty. A telephone poll by Ipsos Mori showed 53% of Britons would vote to leave the European Union, according to the Evening Standard, a newspaper. Ever wanted to walk on water? Soon you will be able to once the latest art installation, The Floating Piers, is inaugurated that will provide walkways over Italy's Lake Iseo. After under 2 years of planning and a cost of $70 million, Bulgarian-born artist Christo is set to inaugurate his latest art installation. 220,000 high-density polyethylene cubes have been attached together and anchored by divers to concrete slabs on the lake floor. 16 meters wide and 35 centimeters high, the walkway will undulate with the movement of the waves as people walk upon it. The current Italian installation will open on the 18th and will run until July 3rd. And finally, fair summer conditions prevail across the kingdom for the rest of tonight, with northwesterly moderate to brisk winds. A slight rise in temperature is expected tomorrow, but it remains moderate in most areas and hot in the Jordan Valley and Aqaba, where a high of 38 is in the forecast for the weekend. And that's all for tonight. Have a pleasant day.